There's like a weird shadow on the side of my face, but I'm just gonna go with it. It's kind of like maybe Phantom of the Opera vibes. I don't know. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the book If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. I'm going to start with a summary. There will be mild spoilers, but nothing really crazy. And then I will also go into a review and my thoughts on this book and its themes. If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha follows 4 young women who live in the same office-tel or like apartment building, and they live in Seoul, Korea. The first one, Kiri, is a really beautiful woman who works in a very high-end room salon. So she is sort of like an escort, I guess. And it is specifically one of the best room salons in the city. It's considered a top 10% room salon in the city. So she has very wealthy clientele, sometimes famous clientele. She is obsessed with her appearance and goes through many surgeries and is always trying to get closer to basically an unattainable beauty goal. Her beauty draws a lot of clients who are really wealthy and powerful, particularly one regular client named Bruce, and she actually ends up going a little bit too far by trying to see Bruce and his family at dinner, like outside of the room salon, and this ends up getting her into a lot of trouble with her madam, and she is ultimately pushed to pursue another field as an assistant at her favorite plastic surgery hospital. So for her, while that seems like a really earth-shattering thing when it happens, that she's getting in all this trouble, ultimately it forces her to look outside of room salons and take her very real skills that have allowed her to succeed in that field and bring them to another field that maybe has a little bit more longevity and a little bit more stability for her. Kiyuri lives with Miho, who is a naturally beautiful and very talented artist. She does a lot of sculpting and as well as sketching. Miho grew up in an orphanage, but through an art scholarship ended up studying in New York and managed to become friends with really wealthy and well-connected young adults, particularly a friend of hers named Ruby, and through Ruby, she met Hanbin. Hanbin is her boyfriend, and he is a very wealthy heir to one of the biggest companies in Korea. While Hanbin does seem like a very attentive boyfriend and like he is very into Miho, it ultimately is revealed that Hanbin is cheating on Miho with one of Kiyuri's room salon friends, actually. This does seem like a big blow to Miho, and in some ways it is, but it also kind of frees her up from the judgment and the pressure of dating someone from a family like that. So she actually, in the end, leaks the story to the press to gain some attention for her art exhibit, and she has her kind of final moment of letting go of that when she cuts her really long, undyed, untreated hair, and this hair was something that Hanbin really liked about her. So it's a really fun way in the end that she gets to signify sort of growth and independence. It's a moment for her, definitely. Each character in the book has multiple point of view chapters, and of course they all intersect and connect with each other. So I do really like that format. I feel like you just get a little bit more diversity in whose thoughts you're exploring, which is pretty interesting. So the next point of view chapter is Ara, who is a neighbor of Kiyuri and Miho in their building. And Ara is a hairstylist from the same town as Miho. Ara's best friend grew up in actually the same orphanage that Miho grew up in, and really aspires to be a room salon girl of the same caliber that Kiyuri is. And Ara is obsessed with this K-pop idol. Towards the end of the book, Ara does actually get to meet her K-pop idol, Taein, I think is his name, at Kiyuri's room salon, and she is really disappointed by the encounter. It doesn't go at all how she wants it to, and she actually kind of towards the end of the book also ends up befriending the downstairs neighbor, and then ultimately kind of gives up her adoration of K-pop idols. Considering her experience, makes a lot of sense. I don't know if she realizes this, but I think the end of her story kind of shows that one of her best traits is her really fierce friendship, and so I liked that for her. Although ultimately I wasn't quite so engrossed in her story arc. I would even argue Ara doesn't really have a story arc, which made it a little bit hard to be too excited about her ending or too involved in her ending. She was just kind of there. The last point of view chapters come from Wana, and Wana lives on the floor below Kieri, Ara, and Mihu. Wana is a newlywed who is really disappointed with her husband and their marriage. It's just not really what she thought it would be. She actually becomes pregnant, and this forces her to recall her own really difficult childhood. So one of the biggest things she's looking forward to is giving her daughter a better life than she had, one that's filled with a lot more love, a more stable home environment. However, she is also really lonely and anxious about her financial situation because they really don't have enough money to take care of this child. In the end of the book, it's revealed that she receives some financial help from her family in regards to her baby, and her loneliness is quelled a lot when she is befriended by Ara and kind of feels like she has friends and a support system, I guess. So that's a really nice ending. I really liked Wana's ending as well as Kieri's ending. Kieri definitely had the best arc, I would say. Wana just had a really nice ending. That is basically it for the summary. Let's get into my thoughts. Overall, I would probably give this book 3.5 to 4 out of 5 stars. I'm leaning towards 4 because I did enjoy the writing. I felt that it was engrossing. I felt transported into their world and lives. However, I think a potential complaint is that it did not really delve deep enough into the issues that each character faces. In some ways that could also be considered a good thing though. Maybe it isn't necessarily meant to give a complete understanding of every detail, rather just provide the reader with a glimpse into these characters' lives and their world. In that way, I believe it was successful, and the book did tie up a lot of the stories pretty neatly. I guess with the exception of Ara's, I do think that it was a pretty well tied up ending. It was successful, it was uplifting, and it did emphasize the importance of friendships, especially female friendships and female support. So I did really enjoy that. But at the same time, it felt as though it brought up a lot of issues and sort of just glossed over them. A lot of the themes that this book addressed, like sexism, economic hardship, generational differences, the pressure to succeed, and as the title suggests, the importance of beauty and the really impossible beauty standards in Korea. The somewhat disappointing part is that while it does sort of touch on these topics, it does not explore these topics in a deep way, and instead has a bit of a tendency to breeze past with almost a nonchalance or a little bit of a matter-of-fact attitude. I think that that's definitely a potential complaint. I think it's a complaint that I myself hold regarding this story. The story and the writing itself feel almost like a young adult novel, yet written for adults. So take from that what you will. If you like YA novels, you actually might like this, even though it's not technically a young adult novel. It's got a story and a style, I guess, that is very akin to young adult novels. It definitely has a young adult feel, but is geared more towards an actual adult reader. So if you like that style, you might really enjoy this. For the characters, Kieri was undoubtedly the most intriguing and complex and had the most complete story arc, in my opinion. I think that Miho and Wona also had decent story arcs, but for me, Kiri was just the most interesting character to read. She has worked in room salons so long that she has established this really excellent read on people, people's intentions, and I think that that's a really interesting and unique quality. I think that this is why her ending feels so satisfying to me, because she potentially finds a new field in which to implement this very real skill set, and it is likely to be a more stable and probably just a better field for her emotionally. I liked her character, I liked her arc, and I liked where she ended up. Miho, the beautiful, talented artist who is Kiri's roommate, to me, Miho seemed to come across as a little bit too unbelievable in her naivete. I think that the fact that she grew up in an orphanage, she's lived in like big cities, something about her persisting naivete regarding just the world and people felt a little bit too unbelievable for me. However, she is sort of presented as having her head in the clouds, so I think I can kind of excuse it if we can just chalk it up to her character maybe being a little bit like spacey or something, or she's always daydreaming, so I can maybe excuse what seems like an unbelievable level of naivete. Ara, honestly, Ara was just not particularly interesting. Arguably, Ara's character did not even have like a story arc. She just was there. I don't know, she wasn't that interesting of a character for me. I did really like how she has this really strong sense of friendship, but she didn't have a proper arc and her ending was just lackluster. I don't know. That's a place where this fell really flat, and I would almost argue that they could have just chopped her chapters out of this book altogether and it would have made basically no difference. It probably would have made a better book because you could give a little bit more time to Kiri and Miho and Wona. I don't really know why Ara was there. Just to tie people together, I guess. She was there as a plot device. That's that. She didn't really have a personality because she was just there as a plot device. Wona is a really interesting look into the struggles that many young people face with starting a family, I would say. This is very much like the millennial struggle of starting a family, and it's not exclusive to Korea. It's also present in the US and a lot of other countries and a lot of other cultures. Personally, I found her story somewhat compelling because I can relate to the worry of like losing a child, and she's pregnant during the book and I'm currently pregnant, so I felt like I related to her character just baseline from what she was going through. I also really liked that her character had this desire to connect with and forge like female friendships. I also found that really, really relatable. However, I will say if these things don't resonate with you personally, then I think that her story would probably fall a little bit flat if you don't have that really personal connection. When I kind of take a step back and just look at the whole book though, Kiri is undoubtedly the character that was paid the most attention to, and I think that that comes across like really, really clearly. It's not necessarily a bad thing, it's clear that Kiri is the character that the most attention was paid to in the writing process. Generally, it was an enjoyable book, but I would not call it a must-read by any stretch of the imagination. I would definitely not recommend it to every person that I meet. This is a very specific type of book, and you know what to expect when you read it. It's not a book that's gonna change your life. It's not a book that you have to recommend to everybody. It's a pretty good story. It's a pretty good story, and as I said before, people who really enjoy YA fiction might like this story even though it's not young adult fiction. It's kind of similar. I'll recommend it to I think one friend who's really into YA books, and that's about it. Yeah, it was fine. It was good. If you've read this book, I would love to know what your thoughts are below. That's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you later.